Hi, I'm Katie Simmonds, Managing Associate at Womble Bond Dickinson.
And I'm Rebecca Keating, a barrister for Pump Court. And in celebration of Business Women's Day, Womble Bond Dickinson, for Pump Court, and the Society for Computers of Law have teamed up to introduce you to a group of inspiring women working in law and tech.
And over the next couple of weeks, we'll be speaking with women from across the law and tech world who have carved out their careers, covering the private practice, in-house, public sector, and the judiciary.
These exceptional women will share their stories, advice, and explore challenges in these bite-sized videos. We do hope you enjoy watching these videos as much as Katie and I enjoy chatting with the speakers.
And on that note, we hope you'll also join us on the 22nd of September, which is International Women's Day, when we will speak with Triple Olympian Fran Halsall on the topic of big goal setting, challenge, and ambition.
We've got Patricia Shaw and Sue McLean. Trish and Sue have both made history with being the first female chair and vice-chair of SCL. They both have really impressive careers, with Trish being the CEO and founder of Beyond Reach Consulting Limited, a tech ethics company, and Sue McLean, who is a partner at Baker McKenzie, specialising in technology and fintech. Trish and Sue, a question for you both to start off. Why did you first choose to pursue a career in technology?
So interestingly, I didn't. Like many law students, I wanted justice. I originally thought I was going to be a criminal lawyer. Not criminal, thank goodness. Thought I'd go into criminal law. Had been on a bit of a beeline for being part of the Crown Prosecution Service. So I'd done quite a bit of experience with CPS, done a bit of work experience on the defence side. And so having gone to uni, I was kind of really geared up towards joining CPS. And then my last placement at the CPS was actually at Norwich section. And I got to evaluate a number of trials, a number of files, and just decided that actually the kind of way our justice system's lined up isn't really geared towards justice. And that, you know, a lot of it was all about really whether the case could be funded, whether or not the resource and time could be allocated to it. So kind of came to a point of thinking, right, okay, well, what am I here for? Why do I want to go into the law? And started to get interested in technology. I went on my third year abroad to Germany, and I was doing English law, and German language. Had an opportunity to do my master's degree in Germany in this LLM. And I then chose at that point to do domain name rights in a time when my supervisor had no idea what the internet was, how the internet was created, or indeed what a domain name was. And there was no domain name rights. The nearest thing I had to kind of hook onto was the right to a name, Namensrecht, under the German constitutional law, and it's a personality right. So I kind of, there was a bit of kind of copyright and intellectual property, but this was kind of the most interesting kind of technological sphere that they had. So I did that, but that then opened other doors. So I then got the opportunity to go to Aarhus University and do a conference on convergence back in 1999, looking at Internet of Things. And that really set me on a beeline when we were talking about being able to access the internet and do your financial services internet brokering via your microwave screen in your kitchen or your kitchen table. It made me really super interested. And the fact about that being at Aarhus meant that it was comparative law as well. So just having that international landscape. So that set me on a beeline. So I only applied to niche IT law firms or law firms that had a good IT practice. And that's where I ended up, in a niche IT law firm for the first 4 years of my career.
I think I'm pretty similar to Trish in that really a career in technology wasn't something that I sort of designed or planned for. It really was pretty organic for me too. I did law at university, and after that I went to law school funded by the law firm that I had secured a training contract with. So I knew I wanted to do commercial law, but I didn't really know what specific practice area I wanted to go into. So I went into my 2 years as a trainee, training to be a lawyer, spending 6 months in a few different departments. And it was really in the last 6 months of my training that the subject matter really clicked with me. I was in the intellectual property and technology department, and I just really thought the work was fascinating. I spent a lot of my time doing IT and outsourcing transactions, but also this was 2000. And like Trish, this was the rise of the internet. You know, we were being asked questions like, can you contract online? And lots of other issues that you would just take for granted now. And I thought, this is the start of something really interesting, and I really want to be part of it. So I then decided to qualify into technology, and I moved to London and joined the IT and e-commerce group of a law firm. And so I think it wasn't designed. I didn't have a childhood or an interest in technology at an early age, but it just became something that it was so obvious to me that technology was going to be a big part of all of our futures, and to be a lawyer advising in that really fast moving space was going to be a really fascinating role. And it's certainly one that I have, you know, a decision I've never regretted. It continues to interest me. We're always learning because the law is always playing catch up to all these really fascinating technological developments.
And Sue, if we go to you next, what is your favorite thing about being a woman in tech?
Well, my favorite thing about being a woman in tech is, I mean, the tech sector is just inherently fascinating to me. The new technology is really interesting. The new developments, I'm always learning, and I'm a curious person, so I enjoy that I'm always learning and having to get my head around the new technology. In 20 years of advising in this space, there's always something new coming along, and we're always having to grapple with how we navigate that from a legal and regulatory perspective. But I also really love working with people in technology. You know, I have the privilege to deal with lots of really interesting people, and the tech sector is very broad. So, you know, from big multinationals to sort of unicorns to small startups that are really trying to launch their product or service. Lots of really interesting people with interesting objectives and perspectives on technology and its influence on the world. And I also have the privilege that, you know, technology is pretty global these days, and increasingly so. And so a lot of my works, you know, involves me spending time with people from all over the world. It really does bring us closer, and I really enjoy that aspect to it. The women in tech community is not just in the UK, but all over the world. And outside of my practice, that's meant that, you know, it's given me an opportunity to be part of this technology community of women, of really terrific, inspiring women, who in my experience are really supportive and encouraging of each other and really passionate about getting more diversity into tech. I mean, we know, working in tech and tech law, that it's a fascinating sector to work on. But I think everyone is also very conscious about how important it is to get more diversity into technology for all sorts of reasons. And so I think I really got a lot out of becoming a closer part of that community. I think as lawyers, sometimes you can think, well, I'm a bit of a pseudo women in tech. I'm not really I'm not a programmer, I'm not a technologist, but, you know, there's lots of different roles in technology, and we can be role models and support each other, whether we're, you know, project managers or lawyers or any kind of role, that you're still a key part of that sector. And so, you know, joining organizations like Women in Technology and Telecoms, Embolden, working with great organizations like STEMETS that are trying to get young girls into tech, has been really really rewarding for me. And so that's another reason why I really enjoy working in this sector.
Trish, if you could share with us what you think is the most important leadership skill and why.
Well, I wanted to distill it down to 3 words really in terms of leadership, and not just leadership through the SCL, but leadership in all spheres of life. I run my own business as well now, and I've been in other leadership roles in the past too. So the 3 words that I kind of wanted to distill it down to was collaboration, conciliation, and translation. And I think so much of our lives, when you're leading, you don't want to be leading and imposing on people. It's about taking people on a journey with you. And so to that end, collaborating with people and getting the best out of others and working with others to the best of their ability actually brings out the better part of you as well. So that collaborative approach. And then realizing also that sometimes on the journey you can be wrong, and sometimes on the journey actually that there are times when conflict can arise. And so always in my own experience, I've tended to take a conciliatory approach, and I feel like I'm a better woman for it by stepping back and saying, do you know, I'll make the first move here, certainly in times of conflict or in crisis in certain relationships. And so I think having that conciliatory approach, coming as I hope a more humble leader in my own leadership skill. And then finally, translation. I think a lot of conflict or a lot of trickiness in leadership can be about translation, not just of a kind of language, but just that some things in a conversation or in a when you're direction setting, or when you're trying to lead a project, or when you're trying to deal with the other side, you know, the long and short of it is that some things can just be not picked up as you in the intended meaning you intended it. And so I think actually being able to say what you're saying and then explain it further, translating it into language that, whether it's between a lawyer and lawyer, or lawyer and a project person, or a lawyer and a product person, lawyer and a computer programmer, lawyer and data scientist, you know, you've got all your people, all different disciplines, all different walks of life, and certain terminology might mean different things to them. So I feel like translation is a really important part of that. But fundamentally, I feel the three skills come together as my kind of leadership brand.
And then finally, a question for you both. What is the main challenge you have faced in your career, and how did you overcome this challenge?
I think my biggest challenge in my personal career has actually been becoming a mum, and what that has meant for me in my career. I've been quite a driven person, very ambitious, and I made the election actually after my first child that I would go back to work part-time. So not only was I taking a bit of a career break with my first child, I took 12 months off work, and then I went back to work, and I went back to work part-time. Now this presents two challenges. One is you've allowed yourself to be out of the game in theory for 12 months. And so with that, you've managed to get a whole ton of new skill sets. That there were things in my personal skill set, my own personality, that had become so much stronger. I'd become such a stronger person. I was more fit for the task actually after having accomplished a year of growing another little person and being part of their life. And so I was coming back to work, I felt like a different person. But then I hadn't had the daily law reports, the constant transactions, and all of that stuff that would keep you up to speed. So I felt like I was going back into the office a bit on the back foot. So that had a bit of a dare I say, a kind of block for the confidence. I think you go back on the back foot of confidence, actually going back into the office after having had a baby, after having had a bit of a career break with that. And then the second part of that was then not only going back as a woman having had a year's career break, but also going back as a woman having then being on a part-time basis. I went back to work 3 days a week. I was the only person, I was actually the first person to go off on maternity leave in my legal team. And so this was a whole new world for my employer. And I was the first person to go back to work on a 3-day contract. And so I felt like I had something to prove as well. I had to prove that I could do a full-time job in 3 days. I wasn't job sharing. There was no one else on those 2 other days or crossover on 3 days. That job was mine. And I still had to accomplish it in 3 days. So I think actually going through the journey of becoming confident again in my own abilities and realizing actually I've got a brand new skill set and I'm bringing that to the table, which made me a lot more confident going back to work after a career break. And then secondly, going back to work on a part-time basis and being able to fulfill a full-time job in 3 days. Not to say that that's necessarily the right way. Other professions and other career paths are able to job share in quite an amazing way. I haven't seen that come off so successfully in the legal profession. Maybe that's something we need to look at and need to change. But what I then did was I delineated and compartmentalized my life. So the 2 days I had at home with my child were 2 days for my child. I was very, very clear, and I kind of benchmarked that off very strictly with myself. So it meant I didn't open my phone, I didn't open my emails, I didn't answer phone calls, unless on the odd occasion when something was massively urgent and really urgent and needed to be done in those days. The rest of the time, I did the hardest, longest hours one possibly could do in the 3 days that I was there. And, you know, I managed to accomplish that for many years of my career. I went on to subsequently have 2 other children. So I think for any women out there who, worried about going back to work after having a career break with children, please don't be. Your skill set will come back. Everything that you know, it's like memory foam mattress. It will come back into play. It's just that kind of short-term knowledge gap. You just fill it. You do get to fill it up quite quickly. It does come back again. And so be confident of that. And then secondly, where you have gone into a part-time role, I think we are still in a world where to a degree, we have to prove ourselves and prove our soul and be trusted that you can do a part-time role in a full-time role in a part-time hours. I'm not saying that's right, but it can be accomplished, and it doesn't mean you have to make a sacrifice of your family life completely. It's different people, different things, but for me, that I needed that compartmentalization. I needed to work it like that, and it has done so successfully. So that's my experience. So challenges, good to rise to the challenge, and it meant that I was able to share my life in the way that I felt was appropriate for me and my family.
Yeah, and maybe I'm going to slightly cheat, because I would say that certainly Trish's experience is similar to mine, in that definitely was one of, you know, my main challenge for me as I progressed, was balancing the family and work commitments. It's tough in our industry where you know, we are service providers, and it can be extremely fast paced. And like Trish, I was the first woman in my team to have a child and work reduced hours. So people weren't really used to it. And, you know, I managed it extremely well, but that was because I had colleagues who were really supportive of it and helpful and understanding. And also really because I had a husband who was a very active partner, and he bore a great deal of responsibility. Without both of those things, it would have been very difficult for me. And I did manage to, you know, I rose to off council whilst working reduced hours, and I was very proud of that. But actually, I think for me, my main challenge was really sometimes myself getting in the way, because I think I'm one of those people that has a bit of imposter syndrome, and maybe a lot of lawyers do, because we're very focused on when things can go wrong. So we're always, you know, there's always some worry and doubt around everything we do, given the nature of our jobs. And I think really probably my main challenge was getting that monkey out of my head, that, you know, I could do things and I should just take risks and worry later, and not put myself forward for you know, speaking opportunities or things that seemed a bit risky. I was in my comfort zone a lot at my old role, and it took quite a lot of active effort for me to get out of that comfort zone. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, that I was working in a role where, you know, it was a great firm. I had a good role. I was enjoying it. I had a lot of flexibility, but I wasn't really fulfilled. Like Trish, I was, you know, pretty ambitious. And I appreciated the flexibility, but I really wanted to push myself forward. And so I decided to move up. I needed to move on. And that was really really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I was interviewing for the first time in 20 years. I really wasn't sure that I was going to find the role I wanted out there. But I just felt, if I don't try, I'll never know. And I really feel that as when I became a senior lawyer and I started to take risks, it actually had a huge benefit to my career. And in a way, I wish I'd thought like that earlier. Because your career is a marathon, not a sprint. And as Trish says, you can take time out, you can make your work fit your lifestyle at the time. But you should have confidence in yourself and really push yourself to do things. I think if you want to achieve what you want to achieve. And for me, it was doing things like this, like public speaking, this does not come naturally to me at all. I love talking to people, but I don't enjoy public speaking. But I just eventually realized that in order to have a profile and you know, to be known as a lawyer in the market, that you have to do public speaking, you have to speak at events, because you can be terrific, but if nobody knows who you are, that's not helpful to build a practice. So I love the sort of slogan that Facebook have, which is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And that's what I think about all the time now. If something comes up and I'm nervous about it, I'm not sure if I want to do it, I think, would I do it if I wasn't afraid? And if the answer is yes, then I say yes, and then I worry later. And that's been hugely helpful for me. And I think for a lot of women, I think sometimes the main challenge is ourselves, and we should just get ourselves out of the way.
I would totally concur with that. I so love that phrase, really do. And I think, if anything, that what you've just said now, Sue, regarding taking yourself out of your own comfort zone, is what made me go on to set up my own business and really branch out, realizing that the scope of a lawyer is so much more than just law. You know, we're strategy, we're sales, we're marketing, we're all sorts, but actually we have a lot of value add. So really, to stop that kind of staidness coming in, or being, you know, you could easily allow yourself to, someone once said to me about succumb to the velvet ceiling. You're in this comfort zone, you could keep going, but if you didn't take the risk and if you didn't branch out, then you'd never know what was on the other side. So yeah, I think that's what made me rise to the challenge of setting up my own business. But really, really good stuff. But yeah, I won't be afraid now. Thank you. I'll take that away.
Trish and Sue, that was great. Thanks so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.